Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Arnel, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you are doing fine for yourself in the year of 2020. 2020, crazy, crazy year. We're currently in August right now. We got 4 months left. 4 months left till, the next year becomes a lot more positive at the very least. Is that really hard to ask? It's really tough for me to ask. Hey, can we have some positivity happening in the world in the year of 2020? That's what I'm hoping for. And so, later today, after I'm done with this podcast here, I'm going down to Los Angeles. I have an interview to do, and the interview is about the popularity of mixed martial arts. And I myself have done a couple interviews with other people, and it's me conducting the interview. And when I talk to them about mixed martial arts, they always give me very similar yet eye-opening responses. I would ask them a series of questions. I'll be like, hey, what's your favorite color? Do you prefer milk or cereal first? How old are you? Do you know who Conor McGregor is? What's your favorite fighter? What's your favorite fight? Have you heard of the new MMA fight coming up this week? I would even ask them very basic questions, because I was going on YouTube and I was looking around. I was looking at some new news that was happening, what's coming up. This Saturday is a UFC event with the heavyweight bout between Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. That's going to be really exciting. But it's going to be really exciting for me, and it's going to be really exciting for a whole lot of MMA fans. But is it really a major event? It's a major event in the world of mixed martial arts, but is it a major event in the world of sports? Currently right now, the Phoenix Suns, they are undefeated in the bubble. Zion Williamson, we have no clue what his update is right now. All my sports buddies were talking about it. All my sports buddies were more focused on the current seedings in the Western Conference for the NBA. We even discussing about, NFL prospects who just came from the draft. We're talking about their development as a player when they made the transition to being a professional, and we talk about that. NBA, NFL. It's more easy to have discussions about NFL and NBA games and NFL and NBA events than it does with mixed martial arts, because it's hard to find that many people who are into mixed martial arts. Now, I have friends who do boxing. They can talk about it. But for the most part, here's the thing. I can talk about basketball and football and MMA with my MMA friend, but I can only talk basketball and football with my non-MMA friends. So this Saturday, big event coming up, the biggest heavyweight matchup to date. Miocic, Cormier 3. Who is the greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time? I asked my friends very basic things about how much they know about mixed martial arts. I told them, hey, do you know that the biggest heavyweight matchup is coming up this Saturday? That one of the greatest of all time, and Daniel Cormier, could be retiring this Saturday? And none of them cared. To be honest, none of them really cared. None of them cared about the events. And I started throwing out names to them. I was like, hey, do you know who this fighter is? And I threw out every single champion's name in front of them. Do you know who Stipe Miocic? They said no. Do they know who Daniel Cormier is? They said no. Do they know who even John Jones or Amanda Nunes is? No. But they know 3 people's names. I asked them, hey, name a couple fighters that you know. They knew who Ronda Rousey is. They know who Conor McGregor is. And they know, not Randy Couture, surprisingly, they know Brock Lesnar. My friend who doesn't watch any pro wrestling, who doesn't watch any football, loves baseball. Even he knows who Brock Lesnar is. And now it got me thinking about this video that I found while I was searching for MMA news. There's a video that popped up that had Brendan Schaub. And Brendan Schaub he's talking about contracts, money, fighter economics, negotiations in the UFC during his time of a fighter. And he said, in the UFC is where you can be famous, but not make a lot of money. And I really thought about that. Are you really famous if you become a UFC fighter? Or are you just famous to a niche audience? Because other than Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar, and Conor McGregor, the people I've interviewed have no clue of Nate Diaz. They can't name a single Conor McGregor fight. The only fights... I challenge that. The only fights or noteworthy thing people know Conor McGregor, as the people who I've interviewed and talked to, they only know Conor McGregor for fighting Floyd Mayweather. They don't know about Conor McGregor on his Twitter. They don't know about Conor McGregor's partying. They don't know anything that Conor McGregor says on his promos. They don't even know Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor even happened. I told them, hey, how good of a fighter Conor McGregor is. Conor McGregor is a great fighter, but they didn't know what weight division he fought in. He fought at lightweight and featherweight. So it made me really think, once again, is mixed martial arts popular? I had one friend tell me that the reason why mixed martial arts struggles appealing to that young demographic, that young audience, 18 to 34, 18 to 32, was because the presentation feels like it's from the early to mid 2000s, and it appeals to people in their early to late 40s. It shocked me, and I was like, no way. 2020 mixed martial arts, does it really appeal to people in their 40s? Does it struggle appealing to people who are young? Well, apparently, according to them, they say it doesn't appeal to anybody young. And I'm thinking right now, what about mixed martial arts is interesting to a young college-aged kid, or it's even a teenager? What about is interesting? I can say why mixed martial arts is interesting, and I've tried to explain to them why MMA is interesting. But what does people like Logan Paul, or Jake Paul, or KSI, or even that OK Boomer girl, what do those internet celebrities do that can connect to a larger audience that the UFC fails to do? And the reason I'm talking about MMA popularity is because there's always discussions about this as to MMA fighters should be paid higher than they're worth. And then I thought to myself, well, I said this before in another podcast, that UFC fighters are paid a fraction of what the organization is making. That's why an NBA athlete like LeBron James or Stephen Curry, they can make $30 million. So the average salary for an NBA player is $7.7 million. And that's gonna rise, without a doubt. And that's not me making up any fake numbers. It's out there. 100% out there. All the money, all the negotiations, how much these athletes are making. It's all out there. Not rumors, no speculation. If you ask these athletes how much money they're making, you're going to see how much they're making, and they'll fact check you about it. Everyone knows what these athletes are making. Heck, in the NBA video game, NBA 2K20 1918, you can play a mode called GM mode, and you have a list. You have the team options, the player options, you got no trade clauses. You have an accurate depiction of how much these NBA athletes are making. UFC 4 is right around the corner, and I'll love it if there's a mode like Dana White mode or Booker mode where you can go and be the person who are booking all these fights for the UFC. That'd be interesting. I want to see how much money would it take to get Israel Adesanya to fight against Brock Lesnar. Like that kind of stuff. But going back to Brendan Schaub's points, you join the UFC to become famous, not to be rich, not to make money. Average salary for the average American, $56,000. I grew up in Stockton, and in Stockton our average salary is about $43,000 a year, is the average salary for the average person who lives in Stockton, California. Now obviously, we can go on and say, well, because the average MMA fight, the average UFC fighter per year makes just under $200,000 a year, more like $160,000. Dana White and many people would say, oh wow, or Chael Sonnens or Ben Askren, they'll say, wait, you know what? $160,000 a year? That's amazing. That's awesome. That's great. You're making multiples of what the average American makes. You should be appreciative. You should be humble of the money you're making. Kind of, yes. But at the same time, can you imagine if a Chael Sonnen or a Dana White or Ben Askren or Daniel Cormier, like, if any of them were somehow negotiating with LeBron James or Stephen Curry, they'll go up to them and be like, hey, LeBron, you should be paid $200,000 per year. Now think about it. NBA, it's an opportunity, not a career, okay? You gotta make the most money as you can. Alright then? $200,000 per year for you, LeBron. The average American makes 4 times less as much money as that. So you should be appreciative and you should be humble that you're making $200,000 in the first place. You know what LeBron would do? He would try to get you fired. He would get all his connections down. He would scoff you off. He would talk smack about you on Twitter. And he would just quit. No, not really quit. He would just deny the contract given. He'd be like, okay, idiots, why are you offering me $200,000 per year when that person over there, just in another state, in another team organization, they're offering me upwards of $150 million over the course of 5 years. No, actually no, that's lowballing it also. Currently there are athletes who are making $200 million per year over the course of 5 years. $200 million, not $200,000, but $200 million over 5 years. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see, a booker from the UFC or MMA, if they're placed in a position where they have to negotiate with somebody like Tom Brady, or they negotiate with any of those like huge like major league soccer players. Dude, soccer players get paid insanely a lot of money. I can't name any soccer players right now, but whenever I look up like the top 10 richest athletes or the top 100 richest athletes in the world right now, soccer players are up there. They really are. LeBron James signed $1 billion contract. I don't know if it's for Nike or Adidas. It's one of those organizations, but he signed $1 billion contract with them. Can you imagine a world where Jorge Masvidal will be in a position where he can sign a $1 billion contract? No. I can't. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine that happening. And the reason why that is because there's not that much money going to the UFC compared to the NBA or the NFL or even the NHL. There's not that much money. And so what can the UFC do to make more money? What can they do? Well, for one, I think they need to focus a lot more on marketing. I believe so. I think it's ridiculous that one of my friends told me this. He says, you will never find an NBA player going on their Twitter or going on Instagram and telling their fans to go watch the game. You never see that. Ever. You'll never see LeBron James on his social media or on Instagram says, hey man, go watch the Saturday night's game when I go take on the Milwaukee Bucks. You're never gonna hear that. But MMA fighters, you hear that all the time. They promote themselves like crazy. There's more self-promotion in MMA than there is in any other sport out there. And one could blame the organization. It's the organization's job to go put over and push their athletes. It's not the athlete's job to do that. The athlete's job is to go to the octagon, perform, and win. Perform, win, entertain the crowd, make some money. That's their goal. Their goal isn't to be like Colby Covington, invade other people's press conferences, go on Instagram, talk smack at people like what Kamaru Usman's doing. Why are they pushing the narratives in the storyline? Why isn't the UFC doing that? I know MMA is in a strange state right now, and I hope it gets better in the coming years. So once again, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right for the short break here, to which I give a short preview of this upcoming Saturday's UFC events. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So I'll be discussing UFC 252. It's a card that's very important because we have Stipe Miocic against Daniel Cormier headlining the event. This could be Daniel Cormier's last fight in the UFC. He wants to retire. He'll be fighting against Stipe Miocic, which many regard as the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Who is the greatest heavyweight ever? Miocic or Cormier? Then we have Sean O'Malley against Marlon Vera. Two very bright prospects here. I am excited for Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is that fighter who has the it. He has the it factor. But he's got a really tough matchup here against Marlon Vera. And it's very astounding to me that Sean O'Malley is fighting at the co-main event. He's fighting the co-main event over names like John Dawson, Merab Davashvili. Sorry if I say his name wrong. And then we have Junior Dos Santos against Giserne Rosenstrike. Sean O'Malley is over some former champions here. So Sean O'Malley against Marlon Vera. That's going to be a really fun one. And then we have JDS against Giserne Rosenstrike. That fight could either be very boring or it could be incredibly exciting. It's nice to see JDS back. Herbert Burns against Daniel Pineda. And they have Merab Davashvili against John Dodson. I'm going to be really honest right now. That might be the best fight of the night. Merab Davashvili against Dodson. It might be the best fight. It really is. We got 5 really fun fights. 3 of them could... 4 of them could end via knockout in the first round. Dodson versus Davashvili might be the most back and forth, most balanced fight out of every fight in this card right now. And I'm saying that because when you look at... Because Davashvili, if you haven't been keeping up with the man, he is an awesome wrestler. I think he currently has the record for most takedowns ever in bantamweight history. And he's fighting against a very game John Dawson. Now, John Dawson, his stock has been plummeting down for, really, for the past 2.5 years. It's been going down. He's still one of the more exciting fighters to watch, though, but he fights so passive that I think it's going to put him in a bad situation that Davashvili is going to go and take advantage of. Also got the betting odds here. No, we have Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. The betting odds, minus 115 Cormier, minus 105 Stipe. It's so close. I don't remember the last time to which 2 fighters had nearly identical odds in beating each other. Then we have Sean O'Malley, minus 330 against Marlon Vera's plus 270. A lot of stock right now is high on Sean O'Malley. We have Giserne Rosenstrike coming in as a favorite against JDS. Rosenstrike had an awful performance against Francis Ngannou. Awful. But JDS is no Francis Ngannou here. And I believe Jazan or Rosenstrike, he can go take JDS to the ground, he can grapple him, he can wrestle him, and he can win via knockout. We have Merab Dvalishvili, minus 180 to John Dodson's plus 160. I say it would be minus 200. I'm not confident. I have that much stock going into Dvalishvili. So those fights I'm very excited about. Oh, Herbert Burns. Herbert Burns against Daniel Pineda, minus 260 towards Burns there. Honestly, I'm not that knowledgeable about Burns and Daniel Pineda. But it'll be in the featherweight division. Herbert Burns being an up-and-coming prospect, 11-2. Very excited for that. Really am. And so Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. Who will win in this matchup? They have near identical odds. Who will be the greatest heavyweight of all time? One thing that's very interesting to me about this matchup here between Cormier and Stipe Miocic is that this fight has not gone to the ground. It hasn't. Daniel Cormier, an all-time great wrestler. Stipe Miocic, he's a boxer first, wrestler second, but he can definitely grapple the best. I'm surprised. I think for this matchup here between Cormier and Stipe Miocic, I'm predicting right now that Daniel Cormier will be more wrestling heavy, more grapple heavy, and he's not gonna go and take the risk of potentially getting knocked out by Stipe or even attempting to knock out Miocic. Now we've seen it. It was shocking. It was shocking to see Stipe Miocic get knocked out by Daniel Cormier. No one expected that. Everyone expected that it would either be Miocic knocking out Cormier or Cormier wrestling Miocic. Instead, Cormier, he knocked him out. So we get to the second fight here. The second fight was really close. The striking was really good. It just Miocic was able to go take advantage of Daniel Cormier. It really puzzled me, Daniel Cormier's second fight. I didn't know what was going up with him. I don't get what his strategy was in that second fight. I just didn't get it because I believe Cormier came to the second fight being like, okay, I knocked out Miocic once, I'll knock him out again. Okay, makes sense. You're developing some overconfidence of yourself, of your own ability to strike. So Cormier, when he strikes with Miocic, his arms, both of his arms, are fully extended out. Fully extended out. And he's not, it's like, okay, you've seen Muay Thai fighters, how their stances are, where they have both arms extended out and then one knee kind of bent. No. So for Cormier, neither of his knees are bent. He's just standing straight forward and he's putting out both of his arms. So it looks like he's lazily about to clinch towards Stipe, or he's walking like a mummy. It looked ridiculous. My dad was watching the fight with me and he felt so puzzled. He was like, what is up with Cormier's stance? Nothing about that stance looked like he was protecting himself. Nothing about that stance looked like he was pursuing, a better angling and fighting shots towards Miocic. Because Miocic, after that first round, was slowly just breaking down Cormier with jab, 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 body punches. I don't know why Daniel Cormier didn't change his stance. Why didn't Daniel Cormier put in a more traditional boxing stance where his arms are a little bit down, they're bent over, so he can go and quickly block the body shots. Instead, both of those arms were extended out, and it left him wide open for jabs. He was able to block hooks, which I think that was Cormier's strategy, was to prevent those hook shots, because Miocic is really good in those. But it didn't prevent the jabs, and it didn't protect him from any body shots. It just didn't. And Cormier, what I also think was going on in his head in the second round, was that because both of his arms were extended out, he was going to go win out via sheer volume and accumulation of total strikes. So his idea was like, okay, I'm going to defeat Miocic here, and the fight numbers will say that I won the fight. I think that was Cormier's idea. And it ended up really badly. It ended up very badly for Cormier. He gave himself up way too easily. He let himself be way too much available for Miocic to go give him those crazy body shots and those jabs. So coming into this third fight here, if I was Daniel Cormier, or I was part of his cornerman, or his team, I say, Cormier, you are 100% better grappler than Miocic. It's 50-50 if you could defeat Miocic in a striking exchange. Complete 50-50. Cormier, you better be ready to wrestle him. You better go and shoot in for a double leg takedown. You better tuck your chin under. And you better slowly work Stipe Miocic over 5 rounds. Be a defensive boxer. Play defensively. Look for his counter shots. And try to look for a way for a takedown. I think, to me, that's the best strategy for Daniel Cormier. It is a dumb idea if Daniel Cormier thinks, okay, well, you know what? I was able to knock him out the first fight. In the second fight, I almost knocked him out. So in the third fight here, I'm just going to make some adjustments in my striking, and then I'm going to knock out Stipe Miocic for sure. Just like the first fight. No! Don't do that. Don't do that, Daniel. He should turn this to a wrestling bout. Now for Stipe Miocic, he has to go find his shots. And there's 2 things he has to look out for when fighting against Daniel Cormier. Watch out for the takedowns, and don't let Daniel Cormier get anywhere near clinching distance. Don't let him do that. Because it's obviously shown between Cormier and Stipe Miocic in their exchanges, Daniel Cormier beats out Stipe Miocic when it comes to close quarters, close range, within the pocket boxing, dirty boxing. If Daniel Cormier gets really close to him, he can throw in some quick uppercuts. He can go duck under, shoot in for a takedown. He can go duck under and shoot in for a clinch. There's a lot of things Daniel Cormier can do better than Stipe Miocic when both fighters are very close to one another. What Miocic can do for this fight, what I think he should do, utilize his reach, utilize his length, slowly grind out Daniel Cormier. I'm practically saying that both fighters should make this fight a grind out fight. It's a lot more safer. Now, not all that exciting, admittedly. I would love to see Miocic against Daniel Cormier fight again like how they did in the first and second fights. But I think this fight going in, both of them are going to fight a lot more smarter, a lot more safe, a lot more technical. I think Cormier is going to go and make this fight be a wrestling heavy bout. I think Stipe Miocic is going to go try to fight Daniel Cormier outside the pocket more, which he should. I also think that should Daniel Cormier shoot in for a clinch? I don't know. Because in terms of striking, it's a 50-50 toss-up, but you're more lenient towards Stipe Miocic. But in a grappling exchange, or when you have to go to, dirty boxing stuff, it's obviously Daniel Cormier. So Cormier against Stipe Miocic, I'm going to make the prediction right now that Stipe Miocic is going to win this fight. That's what I say. And the reason why Stipe Miocic is going to win the fight, because I think Stipe is going to do a really good job playing keep away with Daniel Cormier. He's going to recognize that Daniel Cormier wants to go shooting for a takedown, or there are moments where Daniel Cormier is going to become a defensive boxer. And Miocic is going to slowly pick up our Cormier. Then, if Miocic can go stuff just a couple takedowns from Daniel Cormier, which is going to be incredibly hard for Miocic, it's a lot to ask for, to go stop the takedowns of Daniel Cormier. But if Stipe Miocic can go and just stop a couple takedowns, sprawl with him just a wee bit, get right back up, I can see Stipe Miocic by either the end of the third round or early fourth round, where Cormier shoots in for a takedown again out of sheer frustration, and it'll be a tired takedown. It's going to be a tired gas takedown, and Miocic is going to hit him with one good-looking uppercut onto Cormier, or he's going to pull a couple of really good strikes onto Cormier as he is lunging in for a takedown. Miocic gets in some clean shots. He stuns Cormier. Cormier gets down to the ground. Do a little bit of ground and pounding. Daniel Cormier should be a little bit tired at this point. Also, Daniel Cormier isn't really used to, trying to escape from the bottom position. That's how I see it. Miocic is going to go and win the fight via TKO either in the end of the third round or early in the fourth round. Now, I can be completely wrong here For all I know, Cormier can go in with a flying high knee first round. That could be a real possibility. I've made many wrong predictions in this podcast. So yeah, that can definitely happen. It really can. I pick Miocic winning, and it'll be sad for Daniel Cormier if he retires with a loss. I would like to see Daniel Cormier retire with his arms, up in the air. But I just think this isn't good for Cormier. It really isn't. What sucks about this, though, is that we're not going to see Daniel Cormier. How many times has he fought in the heavyweight division? Not that much. Really not. So the potential matchups we could see with Daniel Cormier, like Cormier against Daniel Cormier against Brock Lesnar, that could have been a possible matchup, and that would look really fun. We're not going to see John Jones against Daniel Cormier, fight number 3. That's a really fun one to see, because I just want to see how good John Jones is if he were to compete at the heavyweight division against Daniel Cormier. We're not going to see Cormier against Gisela Rosenstrike. That's another fun matchup that I'll love to see. But yeah, tough for Cormier if he were to lose. Now, if he were to win, then he would obviously vacate the belt, and then it would become Francis Ngannou against Stipe Miocic for the vacant heavyweight belts. Honestly, I wouldn't want to see that. When I say I don't want to see it, I don't want to see another vacant title. 2020, there's been a lot of vacancies with the title belts and inconsistencies in the division. I just want to see a heavyweight champion. I just want to see a champion retire without a belt for once. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So I am discussing UFC 252. I just discussed Stipe Miocic against Daniel Cormier. That's going to be a really fun matchup. It could go either way. Now, let's talk about the other fights here. The fight that has the biggest favorites in this entire card is Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley against Marlon Vera. This will be the biggest matchup, the biggest fight of Sean O'Malley's career. Without a doubt about that, really. Because Sean O'Malley, coming off the Contender Series, he's already the co-main event. He's fought in the prelims. He's fought as the headline, as like the starting bouts of the main card. He's fought in the pre show. Now Sean O'Malley, man, making his way up to the co-main events, and now there are a lot of people comparing Sean O'Malley to Conor McGregor, and I can see it. Sean O'Malley is a highlight reel, but he's fighting against a very game fighter in Marlon Vera. Easily O'Malley's biggest test to date. So that's going to be a really fun one. For all I know, this fight can end with Sean O'Malley knocking him out with one punch in just 1 minute into the fight. That could potentially happen here, but a Sean O'Malley fight is never boring. It never is. JDS against Gisela Rosenstrike. Alright. So, this fight... how do I talk about this fight? Okay. So, I believe Rosenstrike is going to defeat JDS. I think, to me right now, the two fighters who are obviously going to win their fights. No, there are three. The three fighters who are obviously going to win their fights here. Sean O'Malley, Gisela Rosenstrike, and Merab Dvalishvili. The reason why I'm very high on Rosenstrike, despite his absolute terrible performance against Francis Ngannou, is I think stylistically wise, he is perfect to fight somebody like JDS. It really is. So, Rosenstrike versus JDS is what I imagine Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic would be if I knew for sure that Daniel Cormier would go and shoot him for a double leg takedown. Because Rosenstrike, great ground and pound person here. There's no way he can outstrike JDS. Rosenstrike, ring, bell sounds off. JDS tries to go, he hits like a 3-punch combo, 3-punch jab. And then Rosenstrike dives in, double leg takedown, does some ground and pound. And then he goes and defeats JDS via TKO. That's my prediction. I just don't see a scenario to which JDS can defeat this fight, can win in this fight, other than Rosenstrike being very lazy with his takedowns. But this should be a fight that Rosenstrike wins. Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. Honestly, I do not know that much about both these fighters, but currently right now, there's a lot of stock going in towards Herbert Burns for being the victor of this fight. And then you have John Dawson against Merab Dvalishvili. Merab Dvalishvili currently has the record for most takedowns ever in UFC bantamweight history. Great grappler, really great. One thing that I like to see from Merab Dvalishvili, mostly in this fight, is ground control. Because Dvalishvili, he's incredibly strong, and he can take down any fighter in the bantamweight division. He's that freakishly strong. It is like, when he does go for a takedown, he kind of lets his opponent get right back up. And Dvalishvili's striking isn't the best in the world. I say Dawson is a better striker than Dvalishvili on paper, but looking at John Dawson's recent performances and the fact that he fights very passive, like he's very quick, he fights very passive, very charismatic fighter, he's got a good all-around game, but his striking ability isn't good enough for it to become that much of a factor for Dvalishvili to be aware of or to be afraid of. So I can see this fight. Dawson tries to go overwhelm Dvalishvili with sheer volume, and then at some point in the fight, Dawson becomes kind of passive, and he tries to go and poke in Dvalishvili. So as he's poking Dvalishvili, Merab, in the midst of a jab, is gonna go shoot in, go for a takedown, and then he just wears down Dawson. Dawson, who is already fighting really passive already, he's gonna slowly work Dawson. He's going to do some ground and pound, and if Dawson were to stand right back up, he would be already way too tired of dealing with Dvalishvili in the ground, that Merab would stand right the back up, and he'd go shoot in for another takedown. So in this matchup here, Dvalishvili should defeat John Dawson by decision. I see Dvalishvili wins the fight by unanimous decision. I'm not sure about Herbert Burns against Daniel Pineda. I say Rosenstrike defeats JDS either late in the first round or early in the second round. He's going to grapple with him. Sean O'Malley knocks out Marlon Vera first round. Miocic against Daniel Cormier. I say Miocic is going to defeat Daniel Cormier late in the third round or early in the fourth round after Daniel Cormier goes in for a very tired, gas-looking takedown or clinch, and Miocic is able to go clip him with a single shot. Then he goes in, does some ground and pound onto Daniel Cormier, finds some of his openings, and go wins the fight via KO. Those are my predictions for UFC 252. So I find it interesting. So, even though I knew this fight was going to happen just a month ago, it was still unknown on where the venue was, which means the UFC, they're still trying to push for venues, for there are fights happening in other venues, but it is going to happen at the UFC Apex facility building, so it'll be a lot more smaller. Yeah, we're going to have these heavyweights fight in the small Apex facility building. Interesting. Oh, snap. And now I'm looking at the prelim card here. We have Jim Miller against Vink Pichel. That'll be a fun one. Felice Herrig against Brena Generoba. That might be the best fights of the entire prelims. Brena Generoba and Felice Herrig. If you have not seen Generoba fight yet, I recommend you do. And Jim Miller, being the proper veteran he is, he's going to have a good showing against somebody like Vic Pichel. And so let's get to the new news. What's going on in the world of MMA? Well, Paige Benzen. I can't believe I'm still talking about her right now, this early. But former UFC fighter Paige Benzen joins Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. This is coming in from ESPN. Paige Benzen has found a new home. This is being written by Arnel Hawani. The former UFC fighter says she has struck a new 4-fight deal exclusive contract with Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Her debut for BKFC, I can't believe it's called BKFC, isn't set yet, but the current plan is for her to compete in November. It was an amazing contract and amazing opportunity, Vanzant told ESPN. I also feel like it's not a move backwards for me. It's a lateral move to a new opportunity, a new challenge, a brand new sport. I really have sparked a brand new passion for it, and especially for striking in general. And on top of that, I feel like I still have the stigma in MMA that I'm just a pretty face, and what a way to prove for people to get wrong is to see myself. Okay, so she's gonna say joining Bare Knuckle Fighting is a good way to go prove doubters wrong, and people saying that she's a pretty face. This is a sport where people probably have the highest rate of getting cut open and having long-term scars is definitely something that I'm not even worried about for me. It's just a love of competition, and I'm really excited for it to go out and show off in such an amazing sport. The totality of the deal is worth over $1 million with incentives attached. It represents a significant raise from what she was already making in the UFC. The 26-year-old Paige Benzen competed her last UFC contract against Amanda Ribas, and in that fight, to those of you who are following Paige Benzant's, or me at the very least, when discussing the matchup here, Paige Benzant was such a huge underdog going to that fight. It was so obvious Amanda Ribas was going to win that. And it's because Amanda Ribas, in her interview, she was like, yeah, I'm going to defeat Paige Benzen, now I'm going to fight against somebody in the top 10, now I'm going to go champion. Yeah, so Ribas has these like huge aspirations of potentially being a double belt champion for the UFC. Meanwhile, what's going on in the camp of Paige Benzen? Hey, you know what? I'm going to be a free agent, and I'll go and make a lot of money. That pretty much was Paige Benzen. She didn't care all that much about the matchup. All she kept talking about, all that she kept caring about, was her making more money after her contract was out, doing something else. And Dana White, he himself said like, yeah, good thing for, Paige Benzen being a free agent. Good for her. She should try that out. So Dana White, UFC, they don't really care all that much. But for Paige Benzen, though, now that she is gone from MMA, will she make a return, though, after her bare knuckle fighting career? She goes on to say, I don't know that I am done with MMA. I know momentarily I am. I still have a huge passion for MMA, and I just recently relocated to Florida to train with the American Top Team. Obviously, they're one of the best MMA gyms in the world. Right now, my sole focus is boxing. But in a few years, I could go back to MMA, or I could just be making so much doing this bare knuckle boxing that I don't do anything else. Well, she's really confident in herself then. She goes on to say, I talked to a lot of different promotions. I actually had no idea that I would have so many come with such big offers. I knew I would get big players into the game, like Bellator or ONE, but I actually had 5 or 6 huge, solid promotions that I had to decide on. For me, at this moment in my career, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship was one that fit best. I'll tell you right now, WWE probably tried giving a contract to Paige Benzen. Probably. And then Paige Benzen was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do all that fake stuff, dude. It's going to hurt my brand. So, I'm happy for Paige Benzen. And good for her to go towards boxing, because it was obvious that her all-around game for mixed martial arts, yeah, she has like some submission victories under her belt, and she can grapple. But her strength and her emphasis was striking. And so to her to be like, you know what? Here's the thing. Her fight against Amanda Ribas, you know what happened? Paige Benzen, I think, landed a total of 1 of 4 strikes. Landed. And then she got taken down, ground and pound. Fight lasted under a minute and a half. I think even under a minute. It was a really bad showing by Vanzant. So it made all the sense in the world for Vanzant to be like, okay, my stock is obviously going down, alright then. I am not making much money competing in mixed martial arts. I recognize that if I were to continue pursuing a career in mixed martial arts, I'm probably gonna lose. I'm probably gonna get my butt whooped. Because I'm a big name, so they're gonna push me towards finding another big name, whether it be Bellator or ONE, and I have to deal with a grappler somehow, at some point, as I make my way up the rankings, okay, I'll do bare knuckle fighting, so I know 100% for sure thing, I'm not going to deal with a grappler, I'm not going to deal with clinching, I'm not going to deal with somebody giving a double leg or single leg takedown, I'm going to do what I can do best, and that is boxing, so I'll go towards a boxing promotion. Makes all the sense for Paige Benzen. Good for her, and hopefully her, you know what? She's gonna be making a lot more money competing for bare knuckle fighting than she did in the UFC, because UFC, they don't make that much money. The average NBA player makes $7.7 million per year. NFL, the average NFL player makes about $2.7 million per year. The average UFC fighter makes just under $200,000 per year. Just under $200,000. And like, let me check, how many fights are there for Paige here? So the deal is worth over $1 million. I'm just gonna say right now, $1.2, $1.3 million. You sport, 4 fights. So let's say right now, if it's over 4 fights, and with incentives attached, she's making around $300,000 per fight. Yeah, makes sense. She makes $300,000 per fight. Much more better than when she fought. How much was she making in the UFC? She made 6 figures in the UFC. But definitely wasn't $300,000. I'll say right now, she's gonna be making over twice as much money fighting for bare knuckle than she did for the UFC. And that's not including the extra incentives. So if she had like a knockout early in the first round, she's gonna bank in another extra $50K. So she makes $300K. Yeah, off one fight, she makes $350,000. Compare that to if she were to fight in the UFC, off one fight, $120,000, and that's me stretching it. So yeah, so she would make about the same amount of money, same amount as money, fighting for bare knuckle championships, getting an early knockout, and winning the fights about $350,000, compared to Paige Benzen, who would have to fight 3 more times and make $360K without the incentive being attached to it, and with her winning. There's a lot more risk in the UFC and in mixed martial arts. So once again, happy for Paige Benzen for making as much money as she can. Not only that, also, here's the thing. She's also gonna hold out. She might do modeling again. She might open herself up to doing, TV shows or hosting, or she could do movies again. There's a lot of people that like Paige Benzen that find her very attractive, find her very interesting. And according to her, she made a lot more money doing promotion work on her Instagram than she did being a fighter. So she's making a whole lot of money at bare knuckle, and while she can go do modeling yet again at Instagram. So overall, good for her for making money during the year of 2020. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break here again. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back, and I'm back yet again, continuing the ongoing discussion of MMA hot takes. What are your hot takes of the world of mixed martial arts? And I got a hot take here coming right now. Hot take: Khabib beats all lightweights except Justin Gaethje. Gaethje beats all lightweights except Conor. Conor beats all lightweights except Khabib. Like I said, they all have a winning, but this outcome is most likely to happen. I don't know. Can Conor beat all the other lightweights? Can he? I don't know, like, as years have gone by, people are now looking back at Conor McGregor and being like, is he really a great champion? So is Henry Cejudo. Like, is Henry Cejudo an all-time great champion, considering they have no title defenses? Let's think about it. Are you a great champion with no title defenses? All because you win a title doesn't mean you're a great champion. To be a great champion, no, once you get the title, now you're a champion, and now your legacy continues and begins as champion. And so for Henry Cejudo and for Conor McGregor to be double world champions, the same thing also goes for Daniel Cormier. People are saying it's a battle between who are the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. Well, Stipe Miocic has competed a lot more in the heavyweight division than Daniel Cormier has. When you think about Daniel Cormier, you're thinking about his run as light heavyweight champion more so than his run as heavyweight champion. Because who has Daniel Cormier defeated in the heavyweight division in the UFC? Miocic? I can only think of any. Because you don't think heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier, you think of light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier. So do I think Conor McGregor, is he better than all the other lightweights? I don't really think so. I think Khabib right now, the only matchups he has would be Ferguson and Gaethje so far. Another hot take. Another reason the pound for pound rankings make no sense is that they should, by definition, be weighted towards the lighter weight classes. Like Stipe, John Jones, and Izzy should be nowhere near Cejudo and Volkanovski because the latter are doing what they're doing with far fewer pounds. Thus, pound for pound, the flyweights are much more impressive than the heavyweights, who do essentially the same thing with more than double the body mass. Okay, no. Okay, that makes no sense. Okay, so if it's like pound for pound best rankings here, right? The best pound for pound fighter shouldn't really be based on rankings based on like weight divisions in the first place. They shouldn't. Are the flyweights and featherweights doing more than the bigger guys? Yes, they are. Like Khabib does more, is more impressive, and is more of a versatile fighter than Stipe Miocic. Like Peter Yan can do more than Miocic and Daniel Cormier. Alright? You can all agree that? You can all agree? Alright then. Now that that's out of the way, the smaller fighters are more versatile, are more dynamic than the bigger fighters. But here's the thing. Being a lot more versatile and being a lot more dynamic doesn't make you better. When I look at the pound for pound rankings, I look at who are the who are currently, which of the fighters are currently having the best run. That's when I look at the best pound for pound fighters right now. So that's why Demetrius Johnson, for a while, was considered the best pound for pound fighter because he was the most dominant champion out of everyone else in the UFC. And considering that John Jones is having his run-ins all the time with, as according to the law, him having his belt stripped, him going through suspensions. And here's the thing. Pound for pound rankings, it doesn't even say who is the best fighter in all the organization. They're saying which fighter right now has the most momentum and is doing the very best right now in their respective divisions. So let's say Peter Yan. Okay, so let's say Peter Yan. Let's say he goes on a 20 fights championship defensive streak. Okay, like he defends his belt like 20 times. Alright then. And then we have the heavyweight champion, I don't know, it could be like 50-year-old Stipe Miocic or whatever. He could go on and defend the belt 10 times in a row. Peter Yan should be higher than Stipe Miocic off the basis that his accolades in his current run as champion is more impressive than Miocic's run as champion. That's how I look at pound for pound rankings. So, and I think it's, here's the thing, you would argue it's more impressive if big guys can replicate something that the smaller fighters are doing. And also, if it's the case that pound for pound rankings should be adjusted based on weight classes, then heavyweights and light heavyweights should be nowhere near the top 5 or even top 10 of the rankings of the division. Like, how many weight divisions are there in the UFC? Wait. I'm right now looking up what are all the weight divisions in the UFC there right now. So, there's 8? No way, there's 8. Okay, so, look right now. We have strawweight, flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, featherweight. Though we have over 9. Okay, we have over 9, and that's not considering the women's divisions also. So that's about 11. Oh, yeah, 11, 12. So if that's the case, if we have 12 weight divisions, then the heavyweights and light heavyweight division should be not in the top 10. Which is blasphemous, considering that whether you like John Jones or not, he's he should be the near of the top of the division. He should be. Like, he is one of the greatest of all time, and his runs as light heavyweight champions, as a light heavyweight champion, should serve him for being near the top. Him and Nunes. It doesn't matter what weight division you are, both of them, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, those fighters should be at the very top of the pound for pound rankings, because their accomplishments in their current run as champions are impressive. Like, if Stipe Miocic were to defeat Daniel Cormier, I think he should be below in the rankings, just because upon defeating Daniel Cormier, he's going through a new championship run as heavyweight champion. But no, that is a hot take, that pound for pound rankings should be adjusted based on weight classes. No, that should not be a thing. No matter what Joe Rogan, Dana White, and the UFC say, one win does not make you the GOAT. Nunes, Holloway, and Stipe Miocic. Okay, so they always say the GOAT all the time. Max Holloway is 100% not the GOAT. He doesn't surpass, him and Volkanovski, they don't surpass Jose Aldo, his run as champion. They don't even, overpass Conor McGregor in terms of greatness, in terms of, being a huge headliner and selling shows. So no, Holloway definitely is not an all-time great champion. He isn't. Stipe Miocic, I say he's the greatest heavy champion of all time, just because he's had the most championship defenses ever in the organization's history. So it makes him the most dominant champion of all time. So it makes sense to call him right now, as of this moment, the GOAT. And then we have Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is... Okay, so I'm gonna say, who are the three greatest women's fighters of all time in the UFC? It'd be Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey. And I'll say right now, Amanda Nunes has to be number one. And it's not based off one victory. Her resume and accolades since defeating Ronda Rousey spoke for herself. She's cleaned out everybody in the bantamweights and the featherweight division. She's cleaned out everybody. We'd like to see another GDR fight, but we don't know when that's happening. But right now, Nunes is a GOAT. Next hot take here. The fact that anyone could think Adesanya is the GOAT MMA striker is mind-boggling and disrespectful to other fighters. Adesanya is working his way up then. Israel Adesanya, he's not the GOAT, but he's on his way up there. Conor beating everyone but Khabib isn't really a hot take. I've seen so many people say that. I've got some real hot takes here. Joanna Jędrzejczyk beat Weili Zhang and should have won the Rose rematch. What? No, Joanna lost the Rose rematch. I'm going to be honest with you. She definitively lost that fight against Rose. You can make the argument that she beat Weili Zhang, but she didn't defeat Rose in the rematch. No way. Yair Rodriguez is overrated and still has no ground game and is scared to fight any grapplers. His worst performances ever were against Frankie and Rosa, both grapplers. He's clearly ducking Zabit because of that. Well, no, Zabit himself is like a strike first fighter. And isn't that matchup happening soon? Zabit versus Rodriguez? I think it's been booked for a later card. But Yair Rodriguez, I wouldn't say he's overrated. It's just that he has a there's a low ceiling for him. A low ceiling in that there's no way he can get to the top 5. He can't. He can only reach to a certain level. Yair Rodriguez does until he develops a ground game. Until then, I think he's properly rated right now. I think he is. My viewpoint is that for basically all divisions, and that by the time you get to the top 5, you should have an all-around game. You should be good enough to strike, and you should be good enough to either go for a takedown or defend a takedown. Next hot take, Wonder Boy is past his prime and not a serious contender anymore. He's more of a gatekeeper, and I think it's silly people are talking about him fighting Leon Edwards in a normal contender match when he's on a 1-fight win streak, and 2 of his 3 fights came in he lost 2 or 3 times in his last 5 fights. Till fight wasn't that bad of a decision either. Till outlanded him 3-5. Definitely do not think he and Woodley should have a rematch. Wonder Boy's past his prime. I wouldn't say that's an out of touch take. I think he's like 37 now. He's a 37-year-old guy. His fighting style has gone, the more older you become, the more passive, more safe you become. So that makes sense, all sense. Derek Lewis is one of the least skilled fighters in the whole UFC. Him being a top-ranked heavyweight is not a good look. I challenge that. Him and Alexei Oleinik pretty much just proves that Derek Lewis is not a skilled fighter. Watch Derek Lewis, Alexei Oleinik. You will see this technical mat grappler in Derek Lewis grappling with the greatest submission artist in the heavyweight division. So yeah, Derek Lewis, he was that. He went through cardio, after the Francis Ngannou fight, he went through, changes in coaches, changes in training and development. So in his past 2 fights, he's definitely changed the perspective, and he's become such a great fighter. We're seeing the best version of Derek Lewis right now that could potentially be a lot more better. Thinking GSP was clean in his whole career is as bad as believing Santa Claus and that Earth is flat. Hey, according to Nick Diaz, they say all fighters are on the juice. And if you looked at GSP when he fought against Michael Bisping, oh boy, he looked ridiculously jacked. He did. I'm with you on 1-4 and 6-8, but Derek Lewis, yeah, a lot of people are defending Derek Lewis. Like, leave Derek Lewis out of here. He's great. Vicente Luque is a fan favorite, not a contender. Yes. My own hot take. Robbie Lawler, the current iteration of Robbie Lawler is not fun to watch. It's not fun. His performance against Colby Covington is one of the most mind-boggling things I've ever seen. Mind-boggling. I don't know what Robbie Lawler's strategy was in that fight. I don't get what he was aiming for. I don't get in what way him eating those shots, him doing these weird arm parry stuff. What was that supposed to lead him to? I don't get it. I believe Robbie Lawler against Colby Covington has to be one of the worst fights you can ever watch, because you got one guy throwing out these jabs here that don't look like they're doing any damage, and then you got Robbie Lawler who's just eating it and not really retaliating. Next one is, another hot take, I don't think it's likely we'll see a lot of freakish athletes do MMA in any of the divisions in the future. What if X athlete did MMA will always remain on what if. Future LeBrons, future Westbrooks don't want to give up all that money. Yeah. I'll be honest, MMA, you're not gonna find the best athletes in the world. You're gonna find the best fighters in the world, but you're not gonna find the best athletes. I am a firm believer, if you're to put the best MMA fighters out there, and they were to perform in stuff like track and field, or high jump events, or strength training, they easily lose out to the LeBron James, or the Russell Westbrooks, or even the John Walls of the world, or the Giannis's. There's not a single athlete I can think of in the world of mixed martial arts who can outperform Giannis Antetokounmpo in any athletic drill or activity. I don't think so. And that brings us to a close for today's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and next week I'll go more in detail into the hot takes of MMA. If you have any hot takes, don't forget to message us via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that brings to a close, so I gotta say thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.